Hey everybody, welcome to Talking About Birds, the only St. Louis Cardinals podcast that, like John Mozeliak, the city is getting tired of. My name is Ben Samorka, and Nate is not here with me this week. All right, everyone. So Nate is not here today. I had a lot of options. I could have done another solo episode. I know everyone hated that. So you could just listen to me talk to myself for an hour. I could invite C70. I mean, the hits, it could have been anyone. Nate is in Spain for reasons that he won't share with us. I know that he has hung out with a tree. I think he might be watching baseball late into the night. Outside of that, I don't really have anything else. He doesn't tell me what happens or anything about his life unless it's on this podcast. So it doesn't matter. We've replaced him with a friend of the show, I'd like to say. Somebody, a stalwart of the show. Somebody who was part of our 100th episode celebration, which was total chaos, which is perfect because we have Kyle Reis here, Twitter chaos agent, prospect hound, all-around lunatic. But Kyle, thank you so much for being on the show. It's so good to have you today.
You had me at lunatic. It's my pleasure. I can't wait to talk it over with you. I love being a part of this little podcast.
I hope I didn't put, I'm kind of just soaking that up from our interactions in your, like, I don't want to brand you. I'm not trying to put you into a box. It's just you provide an energy that gets me excited and makes me feel a little bit crazy. So I'm just mirroring that back on you, I guess.
Nobody puts baby in a box. Nobody. I'm in my own box. I'm a chaos agent. I love my lunacy.
Baby, I'd never put you in a box. I don't want to put guardrails around you. Kyle, how have you been? It's been 17 weeks since you've been on the show. It's been a very...
Whoa! Hey, calm down. That's a little much, okay?
Yeah.
How many minutes has it been, Ben? How many minutes?
I'm not a math guy, Kyle. I'm not going to do that. But tweet at us if you can do that for us.
Leave a message.
So over these 17 weeks, a lot's happened. Maybe in your life a lot has happened. I don't really know. A lot has happened in the Cardinal sphere. I guess I just want to know, how are you? How are you doing generally? How are you doing Cardinals baseball wise? How's life?
Fucking A, man. I got a rash. No, everything's solid on my end. This has been an emotional roller coaster of a Cardinals season to start. And, as we are talking right now, the Cardinals are in a rain delay. Lance Lynn pitched 6 pretty marvelous innings on 82 pitches. And I'm kind of sad that he probably won't go out there for a 7th, although it'd be fun if he came out in like 2 hours after a rain delay and pitched the 7th, 8th, and 9th. He might as well. But look, it's been nice to watch them play better lately. It's been nice to watch them see that they can commit a couple errors and still win. I think that's the big takeaway from the Angel series, is that they were getting to a point where it felt like they had to play perfect in order to record a win. And even against that crap team, seeing that they don't always have to play perfect to notch a win, I think was big. But look, I'll take what we've had over the last 2 weeks over, even with the weird series in Milwaukee. I'll take what we've had over the last 2 weeks over what it looked like beforehand. So yeah, that's where I'm at. It's so, I will say, as like a quick aside to ramble on for just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny? Like, even after last year, after dealing with all of that pain and suffering that was the 2023 season, the unexpected pain and suffering, that it still hurts. Like when they lose, how much of my happiness is still dependent on a Cardinal win after all of that?
Yeah, I get the sense that you and I are around the same age, and therefore our Cardinals fandom has been, essentially up and up and up and up, and then recently, obviously going down. I don't know if we are soft isn't there. I don't like using that word, but if we're weakened by the success, if we live and die with the Cardinals fans. I had a Cubs fan staying at my house over the weekend, and she was kind of just drilling me about how I don't know anything about pain and suffering, and true fandom is figured out in seasons like last year and this year. And I don't know how I feel about all that. I think that we are an obnoxious fan base overall. But we put our money where our mouth is. And I think that because we do that, because we spend money like we do, 3 point whatever million people a year, that we kind of earn that right to be annoying about it, right?
I agree. I completely agree. I don't really have a whole lot to add to it. I think part of being fans is being annoying because you're so fired up into whatever that hobby is that you're a fan of that it's hard to replace those emotions. It's hard to separate those emotions.
Yeah, Nate and I talked about this last week, and the idea, the DeWitts, I think, have caught a little bit of just shade recently for some of their comments of, if you don't show up to the ballpark, we're not going to be able to put money into the team. And I think all in all, the way that Nate and I landed on that was, I don't think we really have a problem with the level of money that is spent on the team. I think it's just how the assets have been allocated, and that's what's been frustrating. And we're, obviously I love talking to you about prospects. We're going to get into that. But I also think that the free agency has been a little bit disappointing, but the biggest issue has been the player development, the lack of player development. And I think that's where people like you and I and the sickos that are listening to this show get to be mad at Mo and Co. and everybody in charge.
Yeah. I mean, right now it seems like player acquisition and player development they get kind of mangled a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that the Cardinals have pretty good, especially domestic scouts. I think the domestic scouting system's good. I think that there's a directive that they were given, which involves a lot of ground ball pitching. That isn't really their fault that they win in that direction. That was more of a directive than anything. And I think that gives them a bad rep in a way. But for me, all of this, especially talking with players, and some people who would know, the whole issue boils down to the Cardinals' lack of foresight and forward thinking when it comes to pitching development, and their unwillingness to pivot to a modern style as some of the people that they love in their organization who run these apparatuses maybe age out or have modern sports kind of phase them out, and the Cardinals aren't really willing to adjust to that because those are their people, and they kind of made a living sticking with their people. So yeah, look, that's a ramble to say that, like, definitely the DeWitts are getting shrapnel. I've been throwing a lot of shrapnel at Bill DeWitt III just because I think it's hilarious. I think that they're like, if there's a person who you can have a lot of fun with, it should Bill DeWitt III because he has no track record. It's just like, hey, we gave you these victory blue jerseys. What more do you want from me? Yeah. I didn't take the birds off the bat on the City Connects. Look at me. I'm an arbiter of history. But like, so for me, I like to take shots at him. But yeah, I think Bill DeWitt II, I think he got the Cardinals where they are now. That's part of the reason why we act the way that we act when they aren't doing well. And I want this to not be an issue. What I would like to not be talking about Bill DeWitt II or Bill DeWitt III or John Mozeliak. I just would like to be talking about the product on the field, but they've made it so we can't.
Wouldn't that be great? The third is I heard him on the broadcast the other day defending like how kind of half step they went with the City Connects, and which is just inherently boring, I think. And I think they should have gone harder. And we don't get to see him a lot. The dude's got a personality of a mannequin. Like, there is just nothing there. And I know he's an owner. What do you expect? But I guess, yeah, they deserve to be dunked on. They're also like the silver spoon born billionaires. So who gives a shit about their feelings, really?
Yeah. It's once we started, like, as Americans, and I don't get involved in the royals at all, like the royalty of England. But this is Prince Charles. And you know what? He's pretty terrible. He's also kind of the same thing, and also outdated somehow in his modern standing.
Yeah, the Prince Charles and his family own like they have the largest land holdings in Europe, and the DeWitts have 150 Arby's. What's the difference? It's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, obviously the DeWitts have more when you think about it, because Arby's means so much to my world, and my world's really what matters.
The cultural impact alone is significant, and I am assuming your daily life. So I want to get this straight. You are an Arby's guy over a Lion's Choice guy?
Oh, no, not at all.
Oh,
Not at
okay,
all. But
okay.
what I appreciate is the disdain that most people feel for Arby's, and also the way that it makes my soul and my colon feel upon consuming. So that's usually the direction I go in.
Yeah.
I don't eat either, to be honest with you. I joke around about it a lot, but I will get one of those Arby's Euros every once in a while when my colon
Really?
needs to be cleansed, and they
Real?
taste pretty
Oh,
good.
okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Greek food from an Arby's restaurant. I haven't gone there yet, but maybe I need to try this out. How about this? I'm going to commit to it right now on the show. I'm going
Yes.
to try it. I'll tweet at you. I'll let you know how it goes. And apparently, I'll be tweeting at you from the toilet, but
Yeah.
I'll try it. I'll be
Try
brave.
it. Tweet at me 30 seconds after you eat it, and then 3 hours after you eat it, and you let me know how you're holding up.
Okay. As the roller coaster goes down the
Yeah.
track. All right. We could talk about Arby's sandwiches all day. I got a bunch of questions and just a bunch of shit that we got to get through. So let's get going through my little outline here. First, a little bit of news. We have Ryan Lotus.
Whatever. Who cares?
Yep. It's kind of a fun last name. Ryan Lotus coming up. He is joining the big league club, and Chris Roycroft, the beast from Illinois. It's like 6'8" freak show. Goes back down to AAA. I don't know if I have really much to say about this. This is like the 26th man on the roster getting swapped out. I was, as somebody who's never watched Chris Roycroft throw, I mean, 97, 98 from a 6'8" arm slot? Like, it looked pretty nasty. Obviously, he gave up a home run in his first outing. I haven't really seen much of Ryan Lotus, so I don't really have an opinion. I'm not sure if there's any insight you have. Are you a Ryan Lotus guy by chance?
Nah, I would say, so Ryan in 2022, I guess it would have been, I'm so bad at years now, but in 2022, Ryan Loudis, or Lotus, I'm going to call him Loudis. He made his organizational debut, and he made it all the way to Memphis in that first season. And he really stalled out in Memphis in 2022 and also in 2023, in large part because his fastball was kind of trash. He threw it at high velocities, but his fastball was kind of trash. And for the most part, hitters could sit on it at AAA and crush it. So that's why he's in year number 3 at AAA. But he's made little tweaks to his arm angle, specifically to his timing within his mechanics, that have allowed him to access more deception with his fastball. He's tweaked the movement around it just like the least amount. So his fastball is in good shape, I think. I mean, I still think he's going to get rocked eventually.
Yeah.
I kind of assume Roycroft would get rocked too. But with Roycroft in the minors, he basically went from a high A as signed as an independent league pitcher to Triple A with very little middle ground in there. And his command has always been trash. He's always had high velocity, but his off speed and his fastballs have been trash, and his command is trash. But this year, it seemed like he changed something or fixed something. I don't know. I didn't really dive into seriously to it. And that sinker in particular, he should just really throw his sinker all the time and try to keep it down in the bottom of the zone and hope for the best. Throw that slider a little bit to maybe lefties a little bit and hope for the best. But I think the positive from this is that the Cardinals do have down roster depth bullpen wise that they have been able to cultivate themselves from areas that are not traditional, like the draft or the international market.
Right.
Like both Roycroft and Loudis are not, they're minor league free agents, just different varying levels. So I think that also speaks for some of the amateur scouting that happens within the organization, that they can find some of these guys. And there's another guy named Jacob Bosiokovic, who is a once and future Cardinal legend. Who
have not even heard that name before. It's a $3 name though. I'm impressed.
Yeah, he was with the Cardinals. I forgot what organization drafted him. He was a position player. That organization, it might have been the Reds, turned him into a pitcher.
Like Colorado drafted him originally. That's what in 2016. Was.
I knew there was a C in there, man.
Yeah.
But so he was a position player. They turned him into a pitcher. He got like 1 year there. They released him, and then the Cardinals picked him up. And before they released him in like 2022, I think it was, he was close to making a major league debut in 2021, but then he started dealing with some arm issues. They released him, couldn't really get going, and then he made some huge strides this offseason. And aside from getting beat up in one of his first appearances for Memphis, he's been really impressive. And he has a high-octane fastball, simple mechanics, and I believe a cutter slider. I don't think it's a cutter sweeper, but a cutter slider combo that he's going to end up making a major league debut at some point this year, as long as he stays healthy. And again, at what level, you just don't know. How much success he's going to have, you just don't know. But he'll be here in some capacity and he'll help. So it's all a ramble just to say that, like, there are some positives pitching wise that are going on at the minor league level, and those are just some of them.
Yeah, well, let's skip a little bit forward, because you kind of, I have this on the outline and I kind of wanted to drill down on this, but I think the way in which that you're talking about, that the pro scouting and that Mo and co have been going about fortifying the bullpen this year is real, and last year a little bit too, has been a great change, because the handling over the past few years of Ryan Helsley, Jordan Hicks, Matthew Liberatore, Zach Thompson, and Andre Palante has been extremely frustrating. These are all guys who I think I am of the opinion should have gotten a better start or a more straight up chance at being a major league starter. And the Cardinals have done this yo-yo thing. Matthew Liberatore is going through it right now, and those other guys that I named. I think the Cardinals plan to go find relief pitchers that are meant to be relief pitchers and let their starting pitchers actually cook as starting pitchers has been good. But I kind of want to hear your thoughts on, I guess, if I'm way off on lumping all of those guys into a box together. And if, I guess, as far as the development plan, are you seeing an actual change, or are the Cardinals going to keep messing up starting pitching prospects?
I'll answer that first question first, or that last question first. All I've heard of is change, and I've seen minor change at the lowest levels of the minor leagues. And what I will tell you is that from some people who don't think very highly, players within the Cardinals organization that don't necessarily think so highly of either Tim Levesque or Gary LaRocque, they will tell you that luckily both of those guys have kind of taken a back seat, and Chaim Bloom has helped to steer some of the pitch selection and fastball pitch design that's going on in the organization. Now, you talk to some other pitchers in the organization and they'll tell you, no, it's still the same story. I'm still fighting with my Cardinals pitching coaches at the minor league level to throw the pitches that I need to throw when I need to throw them. We're still doing this traditional bullshit. I've even had multiple conversations with people who are like, what we do at the Cardinals is behind what I did in college. I had one prep kid who hasn't pitched very much tell me that he did more advanced stuff. He had more advanced teachings and in the prep ranks he's had at the lower levels of the Cardinals. But that person also speaks pretty highly about some of the changes that he's seen, and they all pretty much believe that's, Chaim Bloom is kind of at the crux of that. So I would say that we are seeing, when you look at the stats, when you look at fastball shape, design, things like that, you're starting to see a little bit of a change. But there's still things like sticking with poor fastballs and not going to enough breaking pitches within the organization. Edwin Nunez comes to my mind. He shouldn't be throwing his fastball, even though it's 98 miles an hour, more than 40% of the time. He should be throwing his changeup and his slider and working on the command of those pitches, and that's still not happening. Tonight, Gordon Graceffo made short work of Austin Shenton, I believe is the guy's name for Tampa Bay, made short work of him in the first at bat, throwing him an 0-2 changeup, and then got 2-2 with him in the second at bat, and it was fastball, slider. Didn't even go to the curve, didn't go back to the changeup, even though he made him look bad in the prior at bat. There's just little questionable things that are stopping, in my opinion, pitchers from taking the next step. Cooper Jerpy not being allowed to throw past 65 pitches and oftentimes going cutter fastball heavy when his slider and changeup are going to get him to the major leagues if he can stay healthy. It's just, there's a lot of questionable things going on in the organization still, and things that I'm privy to, things that I'm not, things that I question, things that I'll never get an answer on because they're so cagey in the first place. And then to your second question, or your initial question, I think it's really interesting, the 5 names you bring up, right? Because I think Hicks and Palante were both, and of course the age difference, but Hicks and Palante were both victims of the Cardinals needing relief pitching and needing high octane relief pitching and thinking that velocity was enough and that development could come at the major league level, which is something that a lot of people think. You hear a lot of people on the radio who think that development can come at the major league level, and development can come at the major league level. It's just that you have to have had developed at the minor leagues to get to the point where you can develop at the major league level. You have to have at bats. You have to have games. It's not about age, you have to be ready to develop at the major league level. And I think that that's the step that people lose. They forget. And then, I think Helsley in particular is also a product of the velocity thing. The Cardinals went chasing velocity, but all 5 of the guys you brought up, Hicks, Helsley, Palante, Thompson, and Liberatore, they're all products of bad evaluation is really what it is.
Right.
and rushing. Helsley's the only one who was on a normal, of all of those guys, he's the only one who was on a normal trajectory. And he was never given a chance to start. They decided Dakota Hudson and his sinker and his ground ball was the better move for the rotation as opposed to Helsley. So Helsley went to the pen, Hudson went to the rotation. They were getting bad evaluations on Helsley's off-speed pitches by some poor coaches and some poor minor league pitching coordinators and minor league, the farm director. Getting bad reports on that. So all 5 of those guys have their own unique thing. Liberatore and Thompson were both rushed after 2020. Palante, you could almost say, was rushed after 2020 because he started at AA in 2021 after being drafted in 2019 and losing the whole season. Hicks was obviously rushed. But I guess the other 2 things with Thompson and Liberatore, as I keep going, is the 2 of them have had this thing happen where they become a part of the rotation and then they get taken out of the rotation and they sit for 7 to 10 days, even though they could have been used in long relief in multiple occasions in that 10 days. And then they get like 1 appearance where they face 3 batters. And then 4 days later, they get 1 appearance where they face 3 batters and their velocities are down and they look bad. And I think that's really hurt both of their developments, and also bad fastballs. They both have bad fastballs that the Cardinals aren't helping them redevelop.
Liberatore and Palante, to hammer on those 2, we know Liberatore's breaking stuff. It's been lauded since they traded for him. Palante's curveball, as far as spin rate is considered, has been one of the tops in the big leagues, and he has a high octane sinker. It seems, I think he kind of gets forgot about in the conversation, but from my point of view, it seems like Andre Palante could have developed into a really solid major league starter because he has weird delivery, high octane stuff. But again, like you're talking about, he was kind of thrown into a position that he wasn't really ready for, ended up, having an okay big league experience, kind of being the ground ball specialist when his repertoire, I think, gives you the look of somebody who should be striking out guys, maybe going 5 or 6 innings. I don't, and maybe that's it. It's just they had a need, so they went that direction and they were just trying to put a Band-Aid on it. I want to go back to what you're talking about as far as the Chaim Bloom factor. I think, it's easy to look at the way that the Rays, and I'll put the Dodgers in the same position as the way that they develop pitching and the way that they talk about pitching. And Rays players talk about it fairly often. Zach Littell just did a great interview that I listened to. And he said, he was kind of a nothing reliever, comes to the Rays, and they say, throw more of your best pitch. Your pitches move like crazy, aim down the middle, let the movement work, and just lean on your best pitch. It seems, I'm sure that there's more to it, and there's pitch tunneling, and there's pitch designing, and there's all this stuff that I don't fully understand, but like to pretend to talk about.
Yeah.
It seems very easy. It seems like the recipe is there, and yet the Cardinals are too stubborn to adopt those. I don't really understand where the holdup is.
Yeah, I think that if we understood what the holdup was, or if they understood what the holdup was, they wouldn't be in that situation. I think it's just, I really do think that sometimes, and it's not about like yelling down a hallway. It's not like that. It's just sometimes you just have the same people around for too long. And it's a crappy thing to say. And if those people aren't striving to be at the forefront of their calling, then they fall behind. And I think the fundamentals of what the Cardinals try to do with their pitching are fundamentals that succeed. Keeping the ball on the ground, trying to limit hard contact. Having fastballs that you can use in zone. The problem is that we started being able to define what a fastball is that you can use in a zone. And the rest of baseball, or a good portion of baseball, use that data to define it, to help shape it and to help push that conversation. And some teams didn't. And the Cardinals just kind of stuck with their ways. Like, hey, this has always worked for us. Even just 2 years ago, it was quote unquote working for us. Andre Palante worked for us 2 years ago in that role. Why can't it work now? Why is, it's not, why can't, why is it? It's not, why isn't it working now? It's, well, why can't it work now?
Yeah.
We just have to be patient. And I applaud that. I think one thing we do as fans oftentimes is say, like, you can't be patient. You can't be patient. And the Cardinals are too patient. I'm not saying that. They've made some mistakes pretty frequently over the last 5 years, 6 years, being overly patient. But there is value to patience and letting things play out and seeing how they go. But when you keep doing it year in and year out, and you're not learning from it, that's where they get where they're at. And I think that's how this thing has perpetuated itself more than anything.
Yeah. All right. I want to take a quick step back. One other piece of news that I wanted to chat about before we got really diving into more prospect talk. A lot of people are talking about this on the internet. Sonny Gray, in his last start, took himself out of a game. And I think a lot of rub some dirt on it types are pretty mad about this. I will give my quick opinion on this. I thought that it was actually, I kind of thought it was cool, to be totally honest with you. I thought it was cool not only in the sense that Sonny Gray is such a pro's pro that he knows when he is struggling and is going to hurt the team. And also, I think it was kind of low key, like a really nice compliment to Ali Marmol and the way that he runs his clubhouse. The fact that that level of trust is there and that they have a, hey, Ollie, I'm done. I know you got, I think it was Jojo Romero up and ready, so he can come in and swap me out. I think this is the machismo bullshit. I like just don't have any time for that. I played football in high school, and I think I got it all out of my system in those 4 years there. So I have just no patience for it anymore. But I wanted to hear your opinion on it, and kind of, just what you had to say about it.
My first thought is, how are we still at this point?
Right?
How are we still at this point where this is a conversation? I think that there's a couple things. I thought your point about the bullpen, about Ali, and about Sonny Gray, I thought I mean, everything you said, I pretty well agree with. I think that that's kind of the crux of it. But I think the communication, you hear a lot of these same fans who are pissed off about this kind of thing, who bitch and bitch and bitch about the communication from the front office. Mo's a terrible communicator. If he his word salad, whatever. But Sonny Gray articulated what was going on. Ali Marmol, after the game, both of these guys articulated what was going on. That, the Cardinals bullpen's been really good, and sure, you don't want it to be overtaxed, but it was just one extra out. It was just one extra out. 30. It would have been. He would have thrown his 32nd pitch of the inning.
Right.
In the 6th inning. That's a taxing inning. And you could tell he was fading. You could tell, you could watch it. If you just watch it, you would see he wasn't hitting his spots. His pitches were going flat. His motion, his body, his motion was going like coming out of sync. You could see it all happening. This isn't. I do think the machismo bullshit is bullshit. I think it's terrible.
Yeah.
But I do think that in the right circumstance, machismo can carry a clubhouse full of cheesies. I do. That moment is not May 20th. It's not against an interleague team in Baltimore, no matter how much you want to win it, especially when Jojo Romero was happy, healthy, and ready to go. And again, it only cost you one more inning or one out. That was it, because Jojo was going to get the 7th, and he still got the 7th. It's just that he got one out in the 6th. So for me, I see communication is what I see. And I think communication is going to help this team win. I think part of the reason why they lost last year as often as they did is they kind of communicated like a bunch of dickheads. But I think that we saw firsthand that there's a certain amount of trust going on in the dugout between the pitching staff, the starters in the rotation, and the starters and the coach. And I think that that's important. And that's not to give Ali credit. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that, I don't think it's as bad as it feels as we watch it. And if you already felt bad about it, you're going to find every little thing you can to feel bad about and to nitpick. But at some point, you have to step back and say, you know what? I know, like any one of us who have ever played a sport ever or have had a bad day at work, because that's what this is. This is work for these guys. Like how many look, I'm a construction worker. Some days I shovel 8 tons of asphalt. With the shovel, I will physically hold 8 tons on and off with the shovel of asphalt. Sometimes I can get up to 16. Sometimes I can do 12. Sometimes I get through 4.5 and I'm like, you know what? I don't have it. I just don't have it. And I step back. Now, I'm the supervisor of my crew. I'm the foreman of my crew. And I can kind of dictate how that all goes. I'm the player coach of my crew. And, but if I'm if I'm dragging ass and it's causing us to not meet our quota of what we need to put out that day, then that's on me. That's on me for doing that. And if I don't step aside and let somebody who's ready to go to get us to where we need, then I'm putting everyone else at an inconvenience. Because here's the other side of this: he lets up a 3 home run there, and you still have to go to JoJo Romero. You still have to go to somebody else, and at that point, the game is in question. So to be honest with you, it is a galaxy move, a galaxy brain move. And if you don't understand that, it's because you're not a galaxy brain,
Yeah. No, I mean, I fully agree with you. Like I said, I think, anytime I these people who are arguing with this kind of mentality or this kind of thought process, it makes me think back to, doing 2-a-days in high school. And if you weren't puking, you weren't playing hard enough. And of course, this is, I'm 16 years old and playing for the South County, football Friday night game. Like, who gives a shit? That's obviously the stakes are lower, of course. But yeah, I fully agree. And the whole thing is a massive turnoff for me. All right. I want to talk about Matthew Liberatore. We kind of talked about him a little bit. He's been mistreated by this organization, I think, aggressively over the past few years. Of course, they had him developing as a swing guy or whatever in spring training. He obviously did not win the position. Zach Thompson got the starting position. That changed. Steven Matz is hurt. Everything's going wrong as far as that position is concerned. And then Matthew Liberatore is thrust into this position, and he's had extremely mixed results. And I guess my question is, can Matthew Liberatore stick as a major league starter? Can he do that thing that we're talking about? Can he develop in the major leagues? Or do the Cardinals need to either swap him out? I know a lot of people have been calling for Simra Bursay. I think I'm saying that name right. Who is pitching quite well in AAA right now and appears, from my point of view, seems very polished as far as his motion and his pitch repertoire and kind of everything he's bringing. Although I think he kind of has Diet Coke stuff compared to Matthew Liberatore's Coca-Cola. But yeah, I'll leave that there. Is Matthew Liberatore ready? Can he develop at the major leagues? Is he a reliever? What would you do with Liberatore right now?
I don't think he's a starter. I don't think he has the fastball or the sinker to be a starter. He's just not ever. He's going to need to use those pitches against righties, or the Cardinals are going to need to accept the fact that he can't use those pitches against righties and augment and change. But he struggles with the command of his slider and his, he's developing a cutter, hoping to help keep righties at bay with the cutter. And so his command with his changeup and his slider and his curveball get kind of wonky. So that's why they try to stick with the fastball, because he commands those pitches better, even though they're kind of trash. So for me, what I think is, I think he can develop at the major league level, but I think it's going to be in a relief role. I think he can develop potentially into a major league starter, but in a relief role. As both he and the Cardinals understand his repertoire and what he has better and how it works. I think maybe that's one thing about Ryan Helsley that I don't give a fair credit. Like, the Cardinals were getting bad evaluations on his off-speed pitches. I know that for a fact. I've seen some of the evaluations. They were so wrong. And as someone who lobbied for him in the public, because I didn't know anybody back then, who lobbied for him in the public to be a starter. Like, once I finally got to see some of the evaluations, I was frustrated as hell. But he's been able to develop at the major league level. Once Yachty went away and they let him start using some of his other pitches, he started developing, and now you could see a route to Ryan Helsley being a major league starter. Yep. Again, there's off-season preparation that would need to change, etc. But I do think that kind of same thing is potential for Matthew Liberatore. He doesn't have that octane, but I've seen him throw in the high 90s before. So I don't think he has it in him to develop the qualities and characteristics of a starter at the major league level as a starter. But I think with success as a reliever, he can put himself in a position to maybe be a real option somewhere down the line. And I feel the same way about Zach Thompson. Again, both of them need to change their fastball. Somebody in the organization needs to help him. Thompson went to Tread and they didn't help him, which is interesting. So those are my thoughts specifically with that.
The Thompson thing is so weird to me because he showed flashes last year of like I was really the way that the fastball and the curveball were coming out of the same slot. There was a start against the Cubs, I remember, where he looked fantastic, and then he comes in this year and he's got a 92 mile an hour fastball. He's lost quite a tick or two on that pitch, and I don't know if is he unhealthy? Did he forget how to pitch over the winter? It's for I kind of perceived his stock as only rising, and I was pretty excited about him taking that fifth position, even though it was going to be for probably a short amount of time. And he's been a massive disappointment.
I've heard somebody ask me about him losing weight this offseason or something. I knew he got stronger. I don't think he lost weight or anything like that. But yeah, so I guess to try to give a little bit of my outlook on Zach Thompson's velocity is my belief, and I don't know any information or anything, is that he's throttling his velocity intentionally to get through the entire season. I think he wants to start, and I think he just doesn't want to get to the point where all of a sudden he can't even throw 90 miles an hour. And part of my reason for thinking that is as I've watched him in some of his minor league starts, he'll stick around the 90, 91, 89. And then in his fourth or fifth or sixth inning, whenever he knows he's at his end, he's throwing 93, 94, might hit 95. So it's in the tank. And I think it's more of a decision than anything. And I think it's a decision based on not overexerting, because I wonder if he tips when he overexerts. And plus, his fastball is weird. And he's probably just trying to keep it to a point where he thinks it plays best, that fork change that he has, the split change or whatever it is. I think he's trying to find a way to make it work best with that pitch and his curve. And I think somebody is telling him, and maybe it's him, that he doesn't need to go high velocity because of the change in velocity, specifically between the curve, which he struggles with and has kind of not thrown all that much, and that changeup, which has become actually his out pitch, has become his dominant pitch. So I'm fascinated by watching him. And also, I would have bet that he gets the start this weekend. Total guess. I have no idea.
It's so bizarre because I bet that if he was with 25 other organizations, they would be telling him to do the opposite of that. Give us 4 strong innings, throw your heater, your good heater, the high velocity heater, hopefully with a nice spin rate, and then play off those off speed and breaking pitches. So yeah, if that is coming from inside the house, then again, just like what the fuck are we doing here? It's very confusing to me.
Well, something I think you and I have talked about before is my understanding has been that the Cardinals have a hands-on, hands-off approach with pitchers. Like, this is our organizational philosophy, and we're going to help you kind of conform to it, but we're also going to try to emphasize your strengths.
Yeah.
If you're going to develop, you're going to have to do it away from us, and I don't think they say that to them. Like, that's not like them saying, if you're going to develop, you got to do it away from us. Good luck. Ha. Yeah. It's, I think it's just understood that, like, if you're going to make real strides in your development, you have to go out and you have to do it on your own in the off season. And it's funny to me. And again, I'm not a John Mozeliak basher. Even now, after all this, I'm not going to take a dump on that guy while everybody else is dumping on him. But when he says things like, we thought some of these guys would have taken a step, some of our AAA pitchers would have taken a step, and that's part of why we're in this pitching depth hell that we're in. That's on them. It's the reason they thought that they were going to take the step is they thought that these guys would go and they'd do it on their own and that they'd come back and they'd be ready for the major leagues. But first off, the talent level in AAA is further away than it's ever been. And second off, they're not doing anything to help them. Like, they're doing little things. They're just not taking the next step. So do you want to know why? And I do think Gordon Graceffo is ready to a degree, but do you want to know why Michael McGreevy's not ready and Zach Thompson's probably not ready and Matthew Liberatore and probably Sem Robersa too and Adam Kloffenstein? Is their struggles are so easily identified, and you have done nothing to help them get through those struggles using modern information or modern techniques. You're not doing anything. You might give them an iPad with some information on it, but you're not helping them. Tim Levesque isn't doing anything for them. The pitching coaches are vastly underqualified for modern baseball. So that is on them. It's not on the amateur scouting. It's not on the players. Again, the players probably could take an extra step doing it on their own, whatever. It's on the Cardinals for not giving them the extra chance to develop. So I wanted to get that off my chest because it's been in my head, and it seemed prudent to what you were saying.
Well, I want to move on. Let's talk about a position player, and then we'll do a quick break. And I have a bunch more prospect stuff I want to talk to you about. I have been banging this drum. Nate is in agreement with me. I think we have some people on our side, but I am fully on the Jordan Walker needs to be on the big league club right now, especially with the offense turning around a little bit. I know his stats in AAA haven't been eye-popping. He still is yet to hit a home run in 2024, which people look at as a very negative sign. I don't see that. What I see is that his K rate has dropped down. He's holding the best K rate he's ever had in his career. Of course, it's a small amount of time in AAA. But he's making contact. He's hitting the shit out of the ball. Lots of over 100 mile an hour exit velocities. And I'm kind of the opinion that the kid is 22. He'll figure out how to lift the ball once he starts getting reps against major league quality pitching. I think that there's nothing that AAA coaches or competition can teach him at this point. And he is the future. So let him develop. And I don't think it's his fault that a month ago or last month, every single player on your team except for Wilson Contreras was hitting under 100 OPS or 100 WRC plus. So curious, he's had 17 games in AAA. I assume that you've watched a good chunk of his at-bats. How are you feeling about Jordan Walker and his development and where he should be right now?
It's given him a chance. So my biggest area of disappointment with Jordan Walker was that he was swinging at pitches that he had evolved beyond. And again, that was some of the pressure that he felt to produce, some of the excitement he felt at the production he thought he could put up. So the one I guess, obvious thing to me is that he's not chasing those bunk pitches anymore. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. Now, I have a little bit different thought here. Is in my mind, this is the last chance you're probably ever going to get to send him down in a way that's going to be productive. Because anything that happens after this, he gets sent down, it's a failure. It's not some kid getting his stuff together. And the Cardinals are actually in a good spot for this because of the production of Lars Nootbaar, Alec Burleson, and Brendan Donovan. Right now, all three of those guys are producing, and they're corner outfielders. Those are technically your Cardinals corner outfielders, which is crazy. Not Nootbaar, of course. Nootbaar's fine.
I hate watching Brendan Donovan in the outfield. He's a great infielder. And I think his arm is a little underrated, but watching him track balls in the outfield is frustrating.
Coming in on balls, he's really good going out on balls. And I'll tell you, that's another issue I have is I see this, right? I see this. And I know everybody else sees this. How come the Cardinals aren't adjusting where they put him in the field? He tracks balls going back and into the gap really well. How come he's not 3 steps up to stop that? I think that there's some following, and that's one thing that I know. I know that they align their defense based on the analytics, whereas that was something Stubby Clapp and Willie McGee used to do. That they don't do it anymore. Right. So they just let Willie do his thing. Sometimes the analytics aren't always right because they're not necessarily taking the individual strengths of the player in mind. So, but that's a rant to get away from Jordan Walker. It's just to say that I'm with you. I think Brendan Donovan's I think he can be a passable outfielder, just like I think Alec Burleson can be a passable outfielder. But as long as Nolan Gorman is on the roster, you can't really do much. So sure, Donovan can play second every once in a while, but all that's going to do is give Lars Nootbaar and Alec Burleson the run of it.
Right.
So until one of those 3 guys ends up not hitting or gets hurt, I'm fine with Jordan staying down at AAA, rediscovering the skin he's in, and getting used to doing what he did at the minor league, which was use his very unique swing to get to the opposite field gap, occasionally run into pull power, and work on getting the ball off the ground just a little bit more.
Sure.
And just becoming that the seed of the 20 home run guy he was going to be, even though everybody wants 30 because of his size, that 15 to 20 home run guy he was going to be that just hit 40 doubles in a season. And then see where it goes when he's 27 or 28 and he's been at the major leagues for a little bit instead of trying to push it all at once.
It seems like they expect the world out of a 22-year-old. And there has been, I don't know if there's any truth to this, so I'm not trying to report it as news or anything like that, but there has been a little scuttlebutt that the Cardinals hitting philosophy has been swing up, and it was swing up during spring training, and it sounds like they're trying to get Walker to swing up, and I think that there are obvious benefits of launch angle. If you're hitting line drives and fly balls, you're more likely to hit home runs, you're more likely to hit extra bases, all this stuff. But I also think that there's something to letting the player figure it out and develop and just hit the ball hard when you're 22 years old. I think, I guess just putting the world of expectations on a kid like this, who's already he not a superstar, but as far as prospects go, he's a name. I think they just need to ease up on the kid a little bit.
Yeah, he needs to ease up on himself. I really don't think, I don't know what's going on in the clubhouse. I don't think that they are. I don't think I don't think that's coming from the clubhouse. I don't think it's coming from the front office. I think that there's a natural thing that comes with hype where all of a sudden Jordan Walker has a bobblehead and, maybe that
Star Wars bobblehead.
Yeah, Jordan Skywalker.
Wow. I know, amazing.
Right? I heard that on the thing the other day on the television.
C70 must be in the room somewhere. It is it's just that good.
Yeah, exactly. And but yeah, so like I think that there's natural pressure. I really think that we as fans put more pressure on him than anybody but himself. Anybody but him puts on himself.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then I have a lot more prospect stuff I want to throw at you. This show is presented by Patreon. Our Patreon supporters. Shout out to those folks. We no longer lose money making this show, which that alone is a triumph. So thank you, patrons. Shout out to the Bird Scored. Check us out, Talking About Birds at patreon.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Talk About Birds. We are on Instagram at Talking About Birds. The show is available on Spotify. The show is available on YouTube. It's all, you can find it. We're on all the things. We got a TikTok, all that great stuff. You can email us questions, thoughts, criticisms, death threats to talkaboutbirds@gmail.com. You can find all of that stuff at talkingaboutbirds.com. And as always, you can text us or leave a voicemail at 848-48-BIRDS. That's 848-482-4737. I don't have any text or voicemails to read this week because Nate doesn't give me access to that line. So I only get fed whatever he gets. So if you left us anything, I'm sorry. Nate's in Spain and he doesn't care about you. Kyle, anything you want to promote or talk about or anything at all?
No.
Kyle's on Twitter and he's a great Twitter follow, although he doesn't want Twitter followers, but you should follow him because he's good.
Love you.
Peace and love, brother. Peace and love. All right. I want to, this happened to be great timing. First off, Nate's a piece of shit for bailing on me, but
fucking Nate, man.
He's bad. And his voice is bad and his Trump impression is bad and everything about Nate is bad. But the good thing about Nate not being here and the good thing about me tricking Kyle into be on the show is that it was perfect timing with Eric Longenhagen's top 36, I think is how many he gave us this year. Longenhagen's top 36 Cardinals prospects, which I always love, not being somebody who I don't consider myself very in-depth knowledge-wise as far as the prospects go. Definitely not as much as Kyle. So I always look forward to this. I always look forward to Longenhagen's work. And I always love getting Kyle's opinion on Eric Longenhagen's work because as we've talked about in the past, no discredit to Eric Longenhagen. He's awesome. I think he's a great writer. I think he does great prospect evaluations, but he's looking at all the teams and you're focused on one team. So I'm always just curious to see kind of your thoughts and opinions. I want to start this off with Quinn Matthews, who has been getting a lot of love recently. He's kind of come out of the gates screaming. He just had a great start. I think was it his promotion to
Peoria to High A.
Yep, High A. And he's come out of the gate screening. And I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts. How excited should Cardinals fans be about Quinn Matthews? I know he's almost 24 years old. I believe he was a college prep guy. But he's throwing up huge strikeout numbers and I think shining really early. What are your thoughts on him? Is this somebody we can dream on?
Yeah, well, I got to watch one of his starts when he was with Palm Beach, and I did not get to watch his start for Peoria. And part of that is I turned it on and they had the behind home plate camera view, not behind pitcher camera view.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you can't learn it. You can't learn anything from that angle. So I watched like 3 at bats and I was like, well, this is a waste of my time. I'm just going to get frustrated. And also, I'm making a special exemption in my very busy night, to huddle in a corner on my phone to watch this thing.
Yeah.
And I can't even watch it. So I didn't get to watch a Peoria start. I watched one Palm Beach start. And the gist was he was a man in a boys' league at that point. I don't really know how else to put it. He didn't really need his fastball, but he used it a little bit. And other than that, he spent 7 innings toying with the opposition. I mean, just toying with them. He was screwing with them is the best term. It was like watching a college or a high school varsity team go up against a freshman team. That's what it looked like. So it was encouraging to see the stat line in his first start at Peoria. I think what I've come to learn, and just a little while ago, I was saying that don't invest too much in the age of pitchers, blah, blah, blah. It's all about experience. But I think when you're talking about guys like Quinn, who I almost called Austin Matthews, I've been watching the NHL playoffs, Quinn Matthews, when you're talking about guys like Quinn Matthews and Cooper Jerpy, you can't take anything that's going on at the minor, the A level, the low and high A level.
Right.
You can't really invest much in it until they get to double A. And I think you'll start to see exactly what kind of pitcher they are there. Now, again, we have data, so data takes some of the question marks out of it. And we know that Quinn Matthews really has data that will tell you all his pitches seem like the kind of pitches that'll play. But we don't know until he gets to double A and starts pitching against talent that can actually do a little something against him. So I would say that be excited about him, right? I think the one thing that I know about him is he's going to make a major league debut as long as he stays healthy. Sure. I think that's the one thing that this tells us. Like, dating back to Gordon Graceffo in Peoria and Michael McGreevy, who were just as dominant at Peoria, especially Graceffo, as Matthews was one level lower in Palm Beach. I think it tells you that that's a major league arm. It's just a matter of what level of major league arm. Like, we know Michael McGreevy is probably going to be a Matt Bowman type at best without changing himself, which is still valuable, but it's not what you want out of a first-round pick. But again, it's still incredibly valuable. I think Quinn Matthews is a fourth-round pick. It could very well be more than that, but pitchers change when all they've done is dominate, and then they start to really struggle and go up against, that next level competition. And Gordon Graceffo was as dominant as I had ever seen at the lower levels. And again, the fastballs are different. If we could have seen the data, we probably would have known that Graceffo would have had some more issues here and there, and that he needed to work on his change and his curve, and that he needed to get his pitches coming from one release point, which doesn't really seem to be issues with Matthews. But we won't know until we see him at double A. And that doesn't mean put him at double A tomorrow. If they did, I'd be fine with it. I don't mean, it's just to say that, like, give him some time, let him settle in Peoria. Let's see if some of those weird stadiums in the Midwest League, because there's some weird stadiums in the Midwest League, can get the better of him. Some of those older college players who just haven't been able to make the leap, see if they can get the best out of him, and then see where it goes from there. But look, it's rare that you see somebody absolutely toy with a lineup the way that he did in that one start that I got to watch. So he's exciting and fun. And he's crazy. Like, he's a crazy dude, and he likes to talk, and he has a lot of interesting things to say. So he's a fun dude there too.
Is he like Nick Gordon believing that the moon isn't real crazy, or more of a fun crazy?
More of like, I could talk about pitching and do it for 17 hours. But somehow we'll also be talking about like Scooby-Doo the whole time. Kind of crazy.
Okay. That's a more fun crazy. The Nick Gordon crazy is also fun, but it's maybe not somebody I necessarily want to root for. And I'd like to take this point in the show to say that the moon is real. It is not a hologram. Just in case any of our listeners are wondering about that. So you've said these guys' names quite a few times on the show already. Gordon Graceffo, Michael McGreevy. I kind of thought as Graceffo as a guy who was absolutely going to make a big impact on the 2024 team. Eric Longenhagen and Fangraphs give Gordon Graceffo and Michael McGreevy, they have downgraded them to 35 plus future valuations, which, obviously players develop. It's not linear. Graceffo could figure something out tomorrow and start dominating. But that's pretty damning, especially they are ranked, again, this is just Fangraph's opinion. They are ranked 25th and 26th in the Cardinals overall prospect rankings right now. That is it's nothing short of an indictment of their ability. And I don't see a lot of names on here that, or I guess what I mean to say is the Cardinal system isn't so overwhelmed with talent that these guys fell down. It seems like a real loss of projection and skill due to their performance. And I guess you've brought them up a lot, but I'm curious if you could nail down what has happened.
Well, yeah, everybody has their own philosophy and their own outlook on this. I don't think it's that much different for Michael McGreevy. I've kind of been one of those people since the beginning where, like, I think the highest I've ever had McGreevy rated on one of my lists is like 14.
Yeah.
I think that there was a projection that the Cardinals were making along with his command, and it just never got there. Again, they weren't doing much to help him, so that's on them. But with Graceffo, now I haven't seen Longenhagen's list, and I do desperately want to make it clear that I do not mean anything I'm about to say to beat up on Eric Longenhagen. That dude has connections. He knows what he's talking about. He's getting information. He's talking to scouts. Like you said, it's just him for the most part.
Right.
I would say that, and I don't know where he has Sem Robersa, but I don't think that Graceffo and Robersa are that much different.
Sem is number 8 on the list right now.
See, so what that tells me...
Almost 20 spaces in between them.
Okay. So Sem does two things a little bit better than Graceffo does. One is commands the ball a little bit better. And his sweeper and his changeup are probably on par with Graceffo's slider. Like, everything else is like kind of a wash. The unsung thing about Robersa is that his fastball is trash and it's worse than Graceffo's. But the thing is, his changeup plays well off of his fastball and his cutter plays well off of his fastball. And his cutter is a good little middle pitch between his fastball and his slider. Now, the issue is we've seen, and I don't think everybody else has picked up on this, we've seen his cutter get beat up by older, advanced talent at AAA and also premium prospects. Like Norfolk ate his cutter alive. He could mix it with the fastball and the changeup and the slider. It didn't matter. They were eating that thing alive because they knew if he threw his fastball, they were going to eat that alive. So they forced him to throw his
Is that the Orioles AAA, right?
Yes.
Norfolk? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is maybe one of the best teams in AAA right now. So that makes sense.
And a real litmus test. And I think like that's where I think that, again, they're all not where they need to be. They're all not top 100 prospects. Gordon Graceffo came close to being a top 100 prospect. And Gordon Graceffo is going to make a major league debut, and he's probably going to be a really good major leaguer for a long time, especially if he can get to his velocity. But the fact that Robersa doesn't even have any velocity is a real issue. It's just that he gets away with being able to throw a changeup that just dies because it's 3 miles an hour slower and comes from the same angle, and it keeps people off of it. And the slider is really good, but there are the fastball is even worse than Graceffo's on a lot of different ways.
Right.
And the cutter is a real question pitch, and I think we'd see that if he made a major league debut. But yeah, again, that's not to beat up on Mr. Longenhagen in any way. It's just to say that, like, I think that maybe it is prisoner of an early season moment more than anything else.
Sure. I'm sure that Sem Robersa is 22 years old. Graceffo is 24 years old. I'm sure that's part of that's a huge factor when they're making these lists. There's a reason why Salas with the Padres is one of the best prospects in baseball. He's 18 and a toolsy catcher. Like that just goes, projectability and all that. And I guess kind of, it sounds like what you're saying is, Robersa is 22. He's not that big of a kid, but you don't think he's going to all of a sudden find a few miles per hour on that fastball. And it kind of is what it is.
It could happen. I mean, look, we've seen it happen with people built worse than he's built. And he has a build, like he could put more muscle on. I have no doubt about that. He could get to more velocity. I just think it's easier said than done.
Right.
I think it's like, when I hear people talk about Jordan Walker getting lift and changing his swing and closing his hips, like it's easier said than done. It's easy for us to say. It's not as easy to do, which of course has nothing for the amount of torque it might put on his arm that might end up causing more problems with that arm if he does change things to get to it. But again, that's all speculation. So I do give him credit there. To your point, like when you're talking, the younger the player, the better chance of being able to project on top of it. And he has an easy enough motion and an easy enough delivery that you could see a situation where maybe a year from now he is throwing 96 with a good off season, and that changes the whole dynamic. But I think in this particular moment, when you have to judge on what you're seeing and what the player has shown the capability of being, I think, and maybe not necessarily projecting and hoping, I think that you have to call it what it is, as opposed to saying, well, he can still do this. He can get to this. Because I could say Gordon Graceffo could completely rechange his fastball, and the two-seam that he's been messing with could end up being a real weapon, and also his curveball could get better, and also his slider could get better. And at that point, you're just making an argument that everybody could be a number one prospect in an organization, which is
Wouldn't
the case.
That be great? Yeah. We can dream. So this might have been 17 weeks ago. This might have been further back than that. It was one of the times that you've been on the show. You told Nate and I to get ready for Pedro Pages to be shoved down our throat. That has happened. You were 100% right. He's fine. He's got a little more thump in his bat than I expected. When he squares one up, it goes pretty hard. I am a huge Jimmy Crooks fan. I am waiting for the day that Jimmy Crooks makes his big league debut. But Mr. Longenhagen and Fangraphs actually have Leonardo Bernal as the best catching prospect in the Cardinals organization. Now, again, this guy is only in high A. He is 20 years old. But I'm curious to hear kind of your thoughts. Is that how you're viewing this, or are we missing something?
Yeah, Bernal he's a lot of fun. And I think what he has is a consistency behind the plate where sometimes Crooks isn't consistent. I think those are maybe like the differences between the two there. I would say that I love watching Leo Bernal. I think he's a really good prospect. I think it's really kind of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
I like Crooks. Again, I this happens to me quite a few times. I think one of the things I've discovered about myself as an evaluator is a lot of times I like an older player a little bit more than a projectable player. So I like Crooks better because I think I understand what he is a little bit better than what Leo Bernal is, who still has a lot of projectability, like we talked, and who could still be something more. Like, and to be honest, in a lot of ways, he reminds me of a switch hitting version of Ivan Herrera when minus just at the plate, not the catching stuff. Because I think Ivan Herrera was a better defensive catcher than Bernal is. But I just think that there's a lot of projection that goes on there, and I think it's easier to project that onto Bernal. And I think he's shown that he can take the steps in order to be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 prospect in an organization, in any organization, not just a weak organization, which I'm not saying the Cardinals are. I'm just saying for like perspective standpoint. I think that they're I think they're in the middle, just for the record.
Well, that's a very interesting statement because you kind of just set me up for my next thought. So again, this is all according to the folks at Fangraphs. The Cardinals have 36 prospects worth talking about. That's the list that I'm looking at right now. Of those 36, 24 of them are pitchers. And outside of Tinkins and Tekoa Roby, they all seem to have fairly limited ceilings. And I guess a prospect depth in a minor league full of not that exciting and or relief pitching prospects doesn't sound like a great place to be. I know that the Cardinals, of course, they've kind of course corrected because of the lack of pitching over the last few years. They've filled their coffers with these guys. How are you feeling about the general health of the organization, minor leagues in general? Do we have a strong future ahead of us right now? Yeah, right. Like,
look, I think some of their lesser known prospects are actually better than they're given credit for. And I think maybe some of the names aren't as good as they want them to be. So I think what they are is I think they are right in the middle. I do. I think if some of these guys can continue to take some positive steps, and if they are working with pitchers the way that we're hearing they're working with some of the lower level pitchers, then I think that they are a top 15, top 10 organization. But to be in the top 10, top 8, everything has to go exactly right with some of the development, and that isn't exactly happening. I do think that what they have in that group of pitchers, like you say, without like real ceilings, is they do have some dandies worth keeping an eye on that are just far away.
Sure.
Both relief options and starter options. And that also have interesting traits that's going to be fascinating to watch how the Cardinals work with and develop those traits. So I would say that, especially with as many young players that they have far away, and with guys like Quinn Matthews coming up, some of the older players like Nathan Church taking a huge step in his development, an outfielder that I've never been high on because he had no access to his power, who is now starting to access power. I think that Zach Levinson's another prospect who's completely underrated. I think that there are elements there that in a year could put the Cardinals in a. Joshua Baez is taking some big steps forward. Some players that with a full year of success this year could put the Cardinals in the conversation to be a top 12 organization. But they need to develop, and they need to take a more aggressive approach in a modern way into making sure that some of these pitchers even get to their limited ceiling. I think about guys like Bryson Mounts and Pete Hansen. Like, those guys should probably be at AA. They should probably be trending towards relief pitching, and neither of those guys are right now. They're both at high A, and they're both not particularly good at high A. So, I think that's where they're at. I think that they need to be able to identify what they're not doing well, help those kids get better, mm-hmm. and I think that that's how they get themselves into that conversation. But right now, that's not where they're at. And also, I love Victor Scott, but they need to be realistic about what he is too. And try to figure out if they have more of a trade chip there, or if they have just a younger Michael Ciani at best. You know what I mean? Like, they need to have a real honest conversation with themselves about how they view and evaluate their prospects and which ones they're properly viewing and evaluating. Because it still doesn't really feel like that's happened, even in the name of the face of some of their lack of success in that department.
Yeah. And I think that point right there, that's where my actual criticism, I think I agree with you. I am not a Mo hater by any means. And I think that the fact that we have been successful as long as we have is really all you need to know about that front office. But where they have lacked for me is picking their guys and shipping out who are not those guys and bringing in starting pitching talent would be great, but really just any talent. But do you really need Dylan Carlson, Victor Scott, and Michael Ciani essentially on the same 40-man roster? I'm not sure that you do when you have Lars Nootbaar, who's going to be there for a while, and you hope Jordan Walker, who's going to be there for a while. It's silly to me to have three of maybe the same player, although Dylan Carlson's a whole other can of worms that we don't need to get into right now. But my God, I just want him to be successful.
Yeah.
Outside of that, any other names that we hadn't talked about that you want to shout out or call attention to on the in the minor leagues this year?
Yeah, I think like Chen Wei Lin was really impressive. A big bodied 19, maybe 20-year-old pitcher at Palm Beach right now. I want the Cardinals to be very, very soft in his development, bringing him along pretty soft. He's one of those players that you don't need to rush. I don't think his fastball is as good as it needs to be, even though it's like a mid-90s pitch. But he has great pitch ability. He throws a lot of strikes, even though it's tough to control that big body of his. He's like 6'8". He'll get stronger.
6'7", 188 is what it says here.
Yeah, and he's probably a little bit bigger than that at this point.
Yeah.
He's probably closer to 200 at this point. Sometimes that stuff can get lost, but he's still very svelte. And he still needs to bulk up a little bit. But, if you want to talk about a pitcher you could really project on, he's one of those guys. Our good friend Kareem wrote an article about Saladin. I can't think of what his first name is. I think it's Carlos right now, but I'm messing up on that. Keep an eye out for him. Like, they have a group of international prospects that are a ways away that, especially the relief pitchers and some of the starting pitchers like Gerardo Salas, who everybody sees as Juan Salas. He pitched today, struggled a little bit. His fastball again isn't there, but he was fascinating. I like watching him pitch. He's got some good off-speed stuff. For real, like Zach Levinson and Nathan Church are two names that come to my mind right away. They've been really impressive outfielders who are starting to hit for a little bit of thump. Levinson was a 3rd-round pick. I think Nathan Church was a 13th round pick 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now at this point. They have guys that probably aren't getting the attention they deserve. Alex Iadacernia, Michael Curiali, Dakota Harris. some really interesting players. It's just it's a weird group at weird parts in their development that make it hard to like really pinpoint exactly what's going on.
Sure.
But those are just a couple names. Like Edwin Nunez is a bummer because he's not a major league pitcher and they won't change how he uses his fastball. I'd like to see that change. There's a lot of guys out there who are really fascinating. And again, if you get a chance to go out to anybody gets a chance to go and see a minor league game, it's worth keeping an eye on because they've got guys kind of spattered all around all over the place that are having various levels of success and are flying underneath the radar in a lot of ways too.
I think the name of this episode is going to be Bad Fastballs. I think you've said over and over again about it seems like the Cardinals have a problem with developing fastballs, or at least adjusting or making them work in the zone. But yeah, thank you for doing that and giving us those names. All right, a couple of quick segments, and then I can release you back into the wild. Quick series preview. Finally, the Cubs come to St. Louis. I think that this is very exciting. I know, Kyle, you're very excited about Metro Boomin and Nelly releasing the City Connect jerseys that I'm sure you already have on pre-order. And then
got it from China, baby. Got it from China.
That's smart. They're $200, I think, is what I was seeing. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And they look like shit.
Yeah.
The hats are good. I think the hats are pretty solid. And I saw a Nike warm up on the page that just had the arch with the fleur de lis on it, and I might actually buy that. Again, cool. I think it was like $90, but we'll see what happens. So anyways, the Cubbies are coming to town. And this is a team that is a lot better than the Cardinals. I really thought that these guys, the Cubs and the Cardinals, were going to be it was going to be a fun fight. And maybe it is. Maybe the Cardinals offense has truly turned around. But the Cubs have been dominant is an overstatement. Have you been able to watch any Shota Imanaga starts this year?
I have not. I've made a point not to because I don't want to talk about it.
He's special. He is really good, and he is. I can't think of anybody in the Cardinal system right now that has that level of deception that he rocks. I know that Cooper Jerpy, a lot of people talk about his deception and talk about getting away with a 92 mile an hour fastball. Shota Imanaga is the king of doing that. Outside of that, I want to highlight Christopher Morel has had a really great start to the season. Michael Busch, who was a high-end prospect with the Dodgers that they kind of just threw away, has been their starting first baseman. He's had a really great start to the season. Outside of that, I mean, it's the Cubs. I think everybody knows the Cubs. I don't know. Anything you'd like to add to that matchup?
Maybe this is what the Cardinals need. Maybe they come out of the rain delay here and guarantee 2 or 3 at least versus the St. Louis Browns, and then maybe they'll get to go up against the Chicago Cubs, and maybe that's what they need. It's fascinating. I just checked while you were talking. I always try to, I'm on a computer. We're talking on a computer. I always try to make a point to not look at anything because I don't believe in preparation and I don't believe in being well informed. So when you were going over it, I was like, man, I thought I saw somebody on my timeline that's a Cubs person say that the Cubs are going through a bad stretch right now. And entering today, they were 4-6 in their last 10, and they're in the 10th inning right now with the Braves tied 3-3. So it's really interesting. Like timing wise, you just never know how these things are gonna play out. But I think that the bottom line for me is give me more NL Central teams. Like I was all about the balanced schedule. And now I don't like it at all because it's not until May that you play the Cubs and you've only had one other division, series. It's like, that's not really balanced.
Well, I think this is you're talking about the Cardinals front office being slow to react to shit. Like this is it. Like you don't get to just pick on the Reds who have been in they're a dumpster fire all of a sudden. The Pirates who their early season magic is kind of waned away, although I have like a serious man crush on Paul Skeens. He is so fun to watch.
Yeah.
But the Cardinals haven't adjusted their plan. Of course, they can be competitive with all of these teams who I think are middle of the pack. I know Milwaukee's 27-20. That team is not that good. These Central teams are not that good. But like you're talking about, we don't get to bully them all year. It's we have to go get face real competition like the St. Louis Browns. Like apparently the Detroit Tigers, who made us look really bad, and the Angels, who we finally pounced on. But yeah, I think that's another. I could complain about this for a while. I think that's the way that you said that. I thought was perfect. Like they were behind the ball on pitching. They're behind the ball on the way the divisions have changed, or the way the schedule has changed. They were behind the ball on the way that we were limiting shifts. It's just they're always they just seem a step behind, and it's, as a fan, it's very frustrating. All right, after the Cubs come to town, we have those Reds coming to town. You talk about a week where the Cardinals can really jump up in the standings. 3 games against the Cubs in St. Louis, and then 3 games against the Reds in Cincinnati. Cincinnati, who started off super hot, are now 19-28. They have dipped underneath the Cardinals. And outside of Elly De La Cruz, they're kind of shitting the bed. Now, that being said, I do think that they still have one of the most exciting teams in baseball. The problem is this team has more swing and miss than any team I can really remember in recent history. Even Elly is swinging and missing. I think he has 63 strikeouts on the year already.
Me too. That's my number 2.
63 strikeouts in 47 games. Is that your ratio as well?
In one game. It was a really long game, though.
I thought you had a better eye than that. I guess I just built you up in my mind a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say. It's a bunch of young guys who are swinging and missing. The only other thing I want to say is that Hunter Green is another one of my favorite non-Cardinals pitchers to watch. He's only 24. And I don't think he has reached his final form by any means, but he has really stepped up this year. He is really, really good. The Cardinals will see him, and he's just scary. He is so big. He throws so hard, and he doesn't know where his breaking ball is going, but you will swing and miss at it. So excited for these.
Nick Lodolo is one of my favorites, so I'm with you.
Nick Lodolo, he's injured right now. I agree with you. Nick Lodolo is... his motion is like beautiful. It's poetry. He is a very, very impressive. But Lodolo's gone right now, 15-day IL, and the rest of their pitching is okay. And like I said, their position player group is kind of on fire right now. So yeah, let's jump 6 places in the standings over this next week. Anything you want to add about the Reds?
I have no thoughts about the Reds. I hope they stay bad for a little bit. That makes me happy.
Their mascot is stupid. That's my only other thought about the Reds.
Yeah, what's with that guy's head, huh? What do you think?
He's diseased. He has leprosy or something. It is not good. All right. I got 2 pieces of league news. We're not going to play a game today because I'm not Nate and I didn't write a game down. So I'm sorry if you hate me for that, but that's the way it is.
If Nate cared, he could have done it from Spain.
You know what? He could have. And he's, like I said, he's off gallivanting. He's probably eating tapas, which, Kyle, I don't know if you know what tapas is, but it's essentially more money for less food spread out over many places. Okay, good. Yeah, I know. Anytime you go to a restaurant, they have to explain it to you. And I just wanted to make sure that you were on the same page as me. Okay, 2 pieces of league news I want to hit. Recent reporting reveals that former Angels infielder David Fletcher, who I really thought was going to be a good player, he did not turn out that way, introduced Ohtani's interpreter Ippei Mizuhara to the bookmaker while David Fletcher was playing with the Angels. David Fletcher is now a knuckleballing prospect for the Braves. Go figure that out. But he is now implicated in this mess. It is hard for me to believe. I hope that David Fletcher never betted on baseball. But obviously he's wrapped up in this whole nightmare. Ippei Mizuhara is likely going to see jail time. It's kind of insane. I can't believe it's worked out this way. And really, I guess the only thing I editorialize on this is the Angels organization, especially a few years ago, seems it's just chaos incarnate. They have everything that can go wrong with a team. They invent new ways to screw things up, and it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Thank God for the Angels is how I feel.
Thank God for the Angels. And to put a Cardinal lens on it just makes me sad that Pujols wasted so much time there with such a terrible organization. All right, last piece of league news. We talked about this for a couple of weeks, but the Roku deal, which really pisses me off because MLB just keeps making their product harder and harder to watch. We learned the details of the Roku deal, which ends up with MLB getting $30 million over 3 years, meaning that each team gets an additional $330,000 per year. I find that it really makes me mad that MLB would put less than a player's salary per team away to make X number of games infinitely harder to view. It is so anti-fan. It is so anti-spreading the game. It is against everything that I think baseball should be for. And that by that, I mean extremely watchable and extremely easy to view. And for them to do it for such a paltry sum is it's just a hunk of shit. And I don't really have much else to say other than that.
Yeah, I echo your sentiments. I don't understand it. I do think as compared to some of the other ways we've been forced to watch baseball or track down baseball, it was easy, but it's still a crack of shit to have to go through all of that. Like, can NBC give them like $300,000 or whatever to have like local rights for one game? And wouldn't people just prefer to watch that?
Right. Like the money is so small that you would think the advertising alone you would make more money, or just the MLB as a organization, as a multi-billion, they just shit that money out. That's like a rounding error for them. But here we are, late stage capitalism. Rob Manfred is ruining everything. The world is on fire. And I think that's a great way to end this episode. Everything's on fire. Kyle, thank you so much for letting me just pepper questions at you for 90 minutes or so. And thank you so much for the conversation.
It's okay. Before we end this, since you're not going to play a game, and it wasn't until we started talking about Quinn Matthews being a weirdo.
Yeah.
I have to ask, do you think cereal is a soup?
Do I think cereal is a soup? Do I think cereal is a soup? Well, let's define what is a soup. A soup is broth, or I guess it's a liquid.
Oh boy, here we go.
It's a liquid with, well, I guess it doesn't have to have solids in it. You eat it with a spoon, generally. You can slurp it.
Drink it.
Yeah, and I guess there are cold soups. Gazpacho, obviously, being the big one. Is cereal a soup? Like breakfast soup? I think cereal's a breakfast soup.
Oh my God. I know. So this started because at the home opener, they asked all the Cardinals players it, and it was a thing. Yeah. And then during one of the rain delays, they played it, and Mason Wynn was like adamant that it was a soup. And I never thought of it as like breakfast soup, but that's what it is. And that's what we need to market. Speaking of late stage capitalism, that's what we need to get behind right now. We'll start calling it breakfast soup. Yes. And we'll market it as a health item, even though there'll be like nitrates in it. I don't even know what a nitrate is. I think I put it inside of me every once in a while. And I think that
if we opened, I'm gonna if we opened up a shop in like Brooklyn or a trendy like Brooklyn. In Cherokee in St. Louis or just any hip part of town, and if we were charging $25 for breakfast soup, I think we would do quite well.
Yeah, if we would have put it next to one of the vegan places on Cherokee, I think that we could have really cornered the market. I do.
And you could order your breakfast soup with beef milk. You could do it with soy milk. You could do it with oat milk, and we'd have all these very intricately designed cereals. But you could also just get Reese's Puffs or whatever.
Yes.
Okay, I guess we're business partners now, and start looking for a shop. Hit us up on Twitter at Talk About Birds. Would you buy breakfast soup? And do you agree that it is that is the right definition? Because I mean, really, if you break it down, to take a step back, we need to end the episode. Please. But to take a step back, I staunchly believe that hot dogs are American tacos. We've talked about this several times on the episode, and I think when you're being honest with yourself and you're coming in with an unbiased point of view, the hot dog is an American taco. cereal is breakfast soup, and I think that people need to open their minds a little bit.
I agree.
There we go.
I've always been one to support your hot dog as the American taco.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I'm
you.
with you.
Speaking of nitrates, I think that is where nitrates come from is hot dogs.
Perfect.
All right. Well, Kyle, thank you again. I'm glad we were able to solve that issue. Thanks again for being on the show. Follow Kyle on Twitter, even though he doesn't want you to. You're probably already doing that if you're listening to this show. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for replacing Nate. I'm sure the show will be much better because of you. So thanks.
It's my pleasure. I love being on. I love listening to it. I've said it a bunch. It's part of my, truth be told, I always try to listen to you guys and meet me at Mutual. I have kind of a long weekend drive in both directions, and I always try to make a point to listen to both of you guys, and then whatever I have time for otherwise, I like to tune on. But yeah, I love it. Keep up the good work yourself.
That is so nice, and I will say it is insane to me that anybody would listen to this ever, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and again, thanks for being on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to Kyle again. Let's go Cardinals. We have a great week of baseball ahead of us. Let's jump up in the standings, crush some Cubbies, and set the Reds on fire. Thanks, everyone.